Okay, we're trying our best. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me today and taking time out of your schedules to tune into my presentation. I hope everyone is staying home and staying healthy to do their best to flatten the curve and prevent the spread of this disease. Before I begin, I just want to mention that you can write questions or comments in the chat as they come up if you're watching live with me right now, or feel free to send them to my email if you're watching this later. So let's get started. Today I'm going to be discussing age and culture differences across 5 different dimensions of the semantic meaning of the word sadness. And to clarify that just a little bit, semantic meaning indicates the definition of a word within a cultural context, not personal associations that one might have with the word. And these semantic definitions can differ across groups of people, as we've seen in previous research. And these differences are caused a lot of the time by different factors such as age. Specifically, age has been shown to influence 2 dimensions I'll be discussing today, valence and arousal. So we see here the circumflex model of affect that has been used a lot in affective literature. Valence indicates here on this horizontal line how pleasant or unpleasant a certain emotion is. So on the far left here, you can see negative valenced words like miserable or sad. And on the far right, you would see positively valenced words like happy or pleased. The second dimension is arousal, here indicated on the vertical axis. And this indicates how activating an emotion is. So you might see these high activating words like alarmed or tense at the top of this axis, and at the very bottom you would see words like tired or sleepy when you're not very activated, like gearing up to go to bed. Furthermore, older adults have more distinct associations for the valences, so how positive or negative words are, again, than younger adults when they're tested for their implicit associations of these words. And different affective experiences may be causing these different associations to occur. So if you think about it, as we progress through life, we have different experiences that we have, and as you begin to age, you have different affective experiences than you might have had when you were younger. Say, retiring, losing a spouse, divorce, any of those that you might not be able to experience when you're 20 as a younger adult. Our third component here is expression. So this is exactly how it sounds. How you express an emotion, like frowning or smiling, are the 2 items that I'll talk about here in a little bit. And older adults tend to do worse than younger adults when accurately decoding emotions and facial expressions, but this can differ across emotions. So we're going to see if there are any differences in sadness particularly. Our 4th dimension will be novelty, which is how novel an event is and how people appraise those events. So if an event is described as unpredictable or sudden, does that change when people are describing that event with emotion words like sadness? And finally, our last dimension is power. So this would be how powerful or how much power a person has over the situation that's causing them to have or experience an emotion, or how little power they have, contrarily. So this leads me to our main research question, which asked if there were age-related differences in how individuals define, again, the semantic and not personal meaning of these emotion words, specifically sadness for this presentation. And for this, we had 3 specific hypotheses. First one had to do with valence. We predicted that older adults would have more extreme ratings for valence than younger adults. This would be indicated through our items for felt bad or felt good. Secondly, on the far right here, we have our arousal hypothesis that predicted that younger adults would have higher ratings than older adults for our arousal items that you can see here, muscles tensing, breathing getting faster, and so on. And here in the middle, we have our expression hypothesis, which predicted that younger adults would have more extreme ratings than older adults for our expression items, frowning and smiling. And then finally, for this presentation, I added in 2 exploratory hypotheses for our cultural differences on the dimensions of novelty and power. So this study was conducted in both America and Germany. Power analyses indicated that we needed about 30 participants in each age group in each culture. So we had 31 older adults in America with a mean age of 69.68, 30 younger American adults with a mean age of 19.97, 30 German older adults with a mean age 68.27, and 47 German younger adults with a mean age of 21.28. Because we had different sample sizes in Germany, we ended up bootstrapping all of the means, which is important to keep in mind for our data that's about to be coming up. to make it more equal. And all of our participants participated in an online survey using the GRID instrument developed at the University of Geneva Swiss Center for Affective Sciences by Fontaine, Scherer, and Soriano. This instrument was specifically worded to evoke semantic ratings of emotion words and not personal associations. So items would be worded if a native speaker of the English or German language used the emotion word sadness, in this case, to describe an event. How likely is it that this person felt bad or felt good, for example, or that the event was unpredictable, as another example. And these items were rated on a 9-point Likert type scale indicating likelihood. So 9 would be extremely likely to occur, and 1 would be extremely unlikely to occur. So for our results, we used visual confidence interval significance testing on each item. And here I'll skip ahead just to show exactly what we did. So this is a technique proposed by the authors of the instrument for testing across or between group differences. So we see here on the far left, for example, we have our 95% confidence interval that we built around a bootstrap mean for our felt good item. So that means the mean was about here, where you see the line, the top of the bar graph. We have our upper bound of the 95% confidence interval and the lower bound, which does not overlap with our upper bound for our younger adult sample in Germany. So what does this mean here? So we see a significant difference in how our older adults in Germany and our younger adults in Germany are rating sadness for its valence. So younger adults are pretty distinctively rating it as very unlikely to feel good, whereas older adults are rating this emotion word as more moderate than we might expect. We see the same trend in our American sample, which are these two right bars here, but it's nowhere near as extreme as the difference in Germany, which causes there to be a significant cultural difference indicated by these two asterisks here at the bottom by the item. So we see a difference here that older adults are rating sadness as more moderately, and you can see this here on the felt bad emotion too, where we also had a cultural difference and a age difference in Germany, with younger adults rating this as more likely to feel bad. As you see here, Americans also rated this as likely to feel bad. We see no differences here with smiled, which is to be expected. You wouldn't expect anybody to associate smiling with sadness. But here in frowning, we see a pretty big difference in the culture aspect here with the word frowning. But first I'll talk about here how we partially confirmed our hypotheses for the expression component of our study, where younger adults had a more extreme rating here, where they rated sadness as more significantly likely to be associated with frowning. But here we see a significant cultural difference as well because of these high ratings and then our moderate German ratings here. And this got us thinking. At first we thought that our translations might be wrong, that our German translations might be wrong, but actually we did a little bit of digging and found that frowning definitions differ across cultures, but also between English speakers. So here we see what we might perceive as frowning if you're from North America here and you speak English, which is an upside-down smiley face, essentially. Anyways, the locus of control here with the expression is in the mouth muscles, whereas in German, die Stirn runzeln, or to frown in British English, means to rumple the brow. Instead of using this locus of control in the mouth, the muscles that are activated in frowning in British English or in German are in the eyebrows, which might cause that more moderate association with sadness than what we actually experience. Here we see our arousal results. As you can see, there's not very many significant results at all. There's only one. There's a cultural difference in rapid heart rate, but this is to be expected, as sadness is a moderately arousing emotion and not very evocative in terms of how activating it is of your bodily reactions. So you see here a rapid heart rate difference indicated by, that's strongly influenced by how these older adults in Germany are rating this a little much higher than, or not much higher, but a little bit higher than everybody else, which pulls up the culture average here. Next, we'll move on to novelty, which I found very interesting here. So we don't have many significant differences. We do have a trend. We do have one significant difference. I don't know why I said we don't have any. It's fine. But we do have one significant difference here where we see our German individuals rating the event that's causing sadness to be more unpredictable or more likely to be unpredictable. We also are seeing a trend that German individuals are rating this as generally more novel than our American participants. And then here on the power slide, we see that we don't have too many differences, but where we do, we see that Americans are indicating that an individual experiencing sadness is significantly more likely to have some power over the situation, whereas we see here that German individuals are rating this as more likely that a person is powerless in a situation. Now, there are a couple reasons why this might be. I will talk about the one that I think is most likely, which is due to our translation that we used for the word sadness, which was Trauer. It technically is translated as a conditional loss, or a conditional sadness in the presence of loss. So it could be grief, is what it's translated as. And in that case, it would make more sense that Germans are rating sadness as a result of an unpredictable event, or as a result of an event where a person is powerless in the situation, since there is loss included in this word. And a discussion of our broad findings. So as I mentioned before, I think this is a subset of a larger experiment where there are more items, and we used two other emotion words, anger and love. Overall, our older adults tended to use more of the scale and had more even response distributions than our younger adults, who had more skewed data. Also, we found age differences to be more pronounced for our negative emotions, anger and sadness. We had the most culture differences for our term sadness here. And what implications could this have? Intergenerational communication is obviously a big one. So when we're talking to people older than us, if you're a younger adult, or to people younger than you, if you're an older adult, obviously the words that you're using to describe your emotions have some weight. And if they're not understood across generations, then we're not conveying the same information that we may want to. From a research standpoint, measurement and equivalence could also be a big issue. A lot of scales that we use in researching subjective age and well-being of older adults use measures of daily affect and the fluctuations of affect, known as the positive and negative affect scale, which actually uses the emotion terms anger and sadness. And if these terms are not defined the same by different cohorts that are using the measurement or being tested out in the measurement, we can't be sure that the measurement is equivalent for all age groups that are being tested. So these might hold greater implications for a lot of the research that has already been done on this. But ideally, we'll be working on a follow-up study in our next steps. But first, I guess in our past steps, the results here, as well as some from the anger emotion and love emotion, were presented at the Gerontological Society of America conference in November. On the right is my amazing research mentor, Dr. Jennifer Bellingtier, who's also a co-author on this presentation. Another next step will be examining some more interesting variables in the data set. Like I said, we used a full instrument which had about 222 variables. So far, I've only presented on about 30 of them. So just piecing the other two together is obviously in the next steps. Also, we are working on a follow-up study currently with better German translations. Like I mentioned, the problem with our sadness translation here today might be causing different ratings to occur that might not be super great if we want to have a reliable test of the comparison of sadness across cultures. And in our follow-up study, we're going to try to use 4 words of differing valence and arousal. So here's the circumplex model of affect again from earlier. So ideally, we'll have a word with high arousal and positive valence, low arousal, positive valence, and then both arousals and negative valence as well. And this will hopefully be completed at my graduate institution, Oregon State University, where I will be completing my PhD in Human Development and Family Sciences with co-advisors Dr. Robert Stosky and Richard Setterston, virus permitting in the fall. So yes, at this time I will acknowledge the Furman Advantage Summer Fellowship for providing me funding to do my research in Germany the past 2 years and to collect data at Furman last spring. I'd also like to acknowledge Friedrich-Schiller-University in Jena for allowing me to come back 2 years in a row and for providing me some of the best relationships